All right. I think we are recording. Here we
I think
go.
so. I think so.
All right. So this video is for our new lead volunteers. So thank you to those of you who are watching this or anyone in the future who's watching this. This is meant as a training for our lead volunteers. So folks who have graciously, willingly said, yes, I will help build up the team at Maple Grove Hospital, build up the volunteer team, and be a contact, a point of help and encouragement for our volunteers, especially nights and weekends when we're not available, and to help just kind of build up our community. So, you know me, Jennifer Nelson. I'm joined by the wonderful Joni Knutson. I feel like we're a little bit on a television show here, but we'll
That's
take
a
our
great
15.
introduction. Great
Yeah,
introduction.
our
Thank you.
15 minutes of fame, we'll take it
Yeah,
even
right.
if it's a Teams meeting. So, why don't we jump in? We're going to go through the PowerPoint that we put together for our lead volunteers just to go over some basic information about the role. And then obviously, if you have any questions, because you're going to be watching this at your leisure whenever it's convenient for you, don't hesitate to jot down some notes. Reach out to either one of us. We are happy to answer your questions about this. So let's get started.
Let's go.
Here we go. So we just in this time together, we just want to go through obviously some basic introductions, talk about the lead volunteer role, explain what the purpose of it is, and provide some information about what your responsibilities will be and what a typical volunteer shift will look like, and kind of what we're asking for you to do in that lead role capacity. And Joni, feel free to jump in at any time if I forget something. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, some history about our lead volunteer role. We did have lead volunteers active prior to COVID, and we saw a huge impact in our overall volunteer engagement and satisfaction, especially our high school students. Again, nights and weekends when we're not available in the office. It was great to have somebody to answer questions, to kind of keep our high schoolers on track, get some of that extra work done that isn't necessarily assigned to anyone in particular, but still needs to be done. So, um, yeah, and there's actually a lot of science and research behind volunteer engagement. And so some of that research proves that you don't have to be connected to, as a volunteer, you don't need to be connected to, say, the manager or the coordinator in the office. You just need to feel like you're connected to someone to want to keep coming back. So to feel like you're a part of the team. And so that's where we relied a lot on our lead volunteers pre-COVID to really build that team, build up that community and support in the evenings, in the weekends. And just so especially our juniors, but even our new volunteers, any of our volunteers, feel like they have someone to turn to if they have questions, if they have concerns, if something's not going right during their shift, they can't track down a cart, whatever it might be, they have like, I can call Sarah or I can call
Yeah.
Mike and they're going to come help me. Is there anything else you want to add, Joni? Because I know you were really involved with
Yeah,
those
I mean,
leads.
right. So it was I just want to emphasize the team building. It was great to have the lead volunteer on evenings and weekends. Our lead volunteers would gather the junior volunteers for dinner, extra duties if they got done. Sometimes the students would get their assigned duties done in like 2 hours and are looking for another hour's worth of work because their parent isn't picking them up for another hour. So our lead volunteer was crucial in that and directing the volunteers where they can go, making a plan to meet in the office and then go do additional tasks. So it was really important for us to have that, and we're just excited to revamp them now that the COVID-19 has calmed down a bit. I mean, we're never going to get rid of it, but we're not in the height of the pandemic anymore. So it's going to be great to just have lead volunteers back here on campus.
Yeah, and there's definitely a need because we've seen our numbers grow so much. And so,
Hmm.
things were pretty quiet around here for a while in our volunteer program. But as we have reopened the application for adults or for juniors, our numbers are growing. And so, I think you had said we doubled our numbers in
We
the
doubled.
past year. And
Hmm.
so we really do need more of those points of contact who can be the team builders, the leaders, the problem solvers, kind of in the off hours. So
Yep.
yeah. Well, so that's you. We're looking to you as a lead volunteer to do that work, to be a resource for volunteers if they have questions, there's problems. Like Joni said, to identify extra work to do to get it done, to build up our community, to find work to do. Like Joni had mentioned too, with those high schoolers, they're just here until their ride comes for some of them, just to be a friendly, welcoming face, to smile, to greet
Mhm.
people, introduce yourself. I'm so and so. Can I help you? What is your assignment? Show me how you do your work. Just building relationships in that way. And yeah, really to be a leader on our team and kind of act as the quote unquote face of volunteer services when Joni and I are not here.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yep.
so what does a typical shift look like? Well, you are going to be on your regular schedule for your current assignment. That doesn't change. But what will change is some of the tasks that you're going to be doing during your shift. So, for a typical lead volunteer, what we'll have you do is come in, sign in on the computer as your main assignment. We'll have you log into Vocera if that's something you already use with your current assignment. And then you'll add the lead volunteer assignment. And we'll go over that, I think, maybe before we're done, of how to do that. Plus, we will have instructions for you in the volunteer room. So you'll have a resource binder with all this information in it. So you'll log into Vocera, you'll log in as a lead volunteer, add that to your assignment. So that way, your staff in your current role, let's just say emergency care center, they can still call you as ECC volunteer on Vocera, but you can also tell the volunteers during your shift, hey, if you have any problems, call me on Vocera as lead volunteer, because then that way they kind of know like, well, no matter who is the lead volunteer, that's how they can reach you through Vocera is lead volunteer. Then we'll have you log into our volunteer database. It's called Volgistics. We'll have you log into that on the computer here in the volunteer workroom. You can take a look at who's on the schedule, and then we want you to make a point of connecting with those volunteers that are on the schedule during your shift. So maybe you don't see them, maybe you just call them on Vocera to say, "Hey, I'm available until this time. Call me as lead volunteer." Some roles move around the hospital quite a bit, so if you're not able to connect with everyone face to face on their unit, that's okay. But just as long as you connect with them somehow. So maybe you see them when they come into the volunteer room to sign in. Maybe as you're going about your work, you see them. You can call them on Vocera. We just ask you to make a point to connect with every volunteer that's on the schedule during your shift, so they know how to reach you if they have any problems. But again, to try and build that community. Right. So, like I said, you'll be doing your regularly assigned work. You can take volunteer calls for lead support. Um, and then, if you're done with all of your assigned work, if you've kind of wrapped things up and you still have time during your shift, take a look again in Volgistics. See, are there any other volunteers that signed in since I started who maybe I haven't connected with? So, again, make that point to connect with everyone who's volunteering during your shift. You can even circle back with the volunteers who you connected with at the start of your shift. Just say, hey, I'm just checking in. How are things going? So really communication is key, and just keeping in touch with those volunteers that are scheduled during your time on campus.
And
We will have, yeah.
you'll really get to know your group. So our lead volunteers in the past, I mean, they knew who was on their shift on Thursday evening. So they kind of knew that at 5 o'clock or 5:30, the bulk of the volunteers would be checking in. So they hung out here in the volunteer room just to say, hey, I'm here today. Connect with me if you need any help or if you want additional tasks. So the lead volunteers kind of stayed home base in the volunteer room when they knew the bulk of their um, shift when they were checking in. So let's say you're regularly scheduled from 4 to 8, but your volunteers may come in at 5 o'clock. Just head back to the volunteer room and just kind of set up that home base and check logistics and see who's coming in at that time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think too, sometimes on the weekends the schedules can kind of be all over the place, and so you will
Mm-hmm.
need to check back in to be like, okay, who else has come in now during the
Right,
time that I've been here? So
right.
if it's the end of your shift time, you've connected with everybody, you've filled out the form that we ask you to. The form just really, we'll go through that a little bit more, but the form is a Teams form that you're just summarizing your shift. Who was there, who wasn't there, because that's helpful for us in tracking attendance. Were there any concerns that you saw personally or that volunteers brought to you that need to be addressed? Are there any questions, or do you have any high fives or kudos that you want to hand out to volunteers that you want us to be aware of? So this form is really the way that you will communicate with Joni and I, and then we can follow up on those question, concerns, kudos, and high fives that you want to give the folks on your team essentially during your shift. So if it's at the end of your shift now and you've done all of these different tasks that we ask of you, then obviously you can log out of Logistics, out of Vocera, and sign out on the computer. So that's a typical flow. I don't know if there's a typical shift, at least for Joni and I, there's not really a typical day in volunteer services. So there's sure
No.
to be random things that come up and happen that you address. But this is kind of just the overall, what we think you should expect during a shift when you're a lead volunteer. All right.
All
So
right.
Joni, our
Yep.
techie, put together this wonderful form.
Yes. So, Jennifer had mentioned a couple times that we have a form that we want you to fill out at the end of your shift. It's just a communication tool. It's a Teams form. You can do it on the computer here in the office or with this link. Jennifer, can you click that link? I think it
Yeah.
should be working. It will just it can be on your phone. We'll share with you. It'll be in the lead volunteer handbook. And then also on the computer, there's a lead folder that the link will be on as well. So if you click that, I don't see that it's popping up,
Sorry,
Jennifer. It's
that's
okay.
my bad.
It's okay. They
I
will
know
be
it
able
works.
to, yeah,
It
they will
works. They
be
just
able
need to share
to,
it.
it's okay. Anyway, it should only take you about 5 minutes to complete the form. It kind of runs down. There it is.
Oh, you saw it.
Whoops. Yeah, it
Got
did.
it.
There it is. So
Yay.
on this form, lists out each volunteer role. So if they're here, if they didn't show up, or if it's not filled, you'll be able to quickly look through that. And then there's just a few questions at the bottom. Again, it's just about connecting. If there are any observations made, any actions needed, any questions or guidance, and then just your name and the date. And then that just gets automatically submitted to Jennifer and I, and we can follow up. It's really just a quick tool to use, and you shouldn't have any problem doing that. Again, it can be done on your phone even. I think that's all about the team form. Again, we wanted to talk about the lead resource binder. This is kept at the outside of Jennifer and I's office. There are binders for different things, but you as lead volunteers have your own binder. It walks through how to log into the shared computer in our office, how to log into Logistics, which is the database that you'll be referring to see which volunteers are here and what assignments they're in. And then there's also just some extra tasks that you can do with your team, and that's kind of listed in here as well. But feel free to just look through that and let Jennifer and I know if you have any questions. It's pretty simple to log in to the computer, and I don't think you'll be having any issues, but there's always those times like when I'm usually on vacation that technical difficulties happen, and that's okay. You can always shoot Jennifer and I an email, and we'll walk through it and figure out the issues, but it should work. Fingers crossed, everything should be set up as we expect it to be. And then for Vocera login information, we also have a guide on how to do that and how to add that to your shift. So you would log into Vocera as whatever role you are. So I'm going to use Emergency Care Center assistant or attendant as an example. So you would log in as ECC volunteer, And then you would add lead volunteer on your Vocera login. And information is in this book as well on how to do that. Do we want to show that, or I don't know if it's necessary? It's pretty simple on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to play around a little bit with Vocera, but it's basically you log in as your current assignment, and then once you're logged in, you just click the round button and say add lead volunteer, and it adds that assignment. So now you're logged in as two assignments. The staff primarily use the assignment that you have regularly, but then tell your volunteers during your shift, hey, call me as lead volunteer. And then, yeah, and that's how they can easily get in touch with you.
Yeah, we really want the volunteers to know you as lead volunteer, just so that that's a resource. We will be using that in communication with volunteers. So you will be referred to as lead volunteer, not your current, your active assignment on campus. So
yes. I think that is everything that we wanted to go through. Just say, hey, questions.
Questions, yeah. Well, we had planned on doing this live, but
yes.
So, but yes, please email us if you have any questions.
Yes. And I will say, right now as we're recording this, we have a handful of folks that are going to be starting in the lead volunteer role. So we will share communication in our weekly email to all volunteers about kind of the resurrection of this lead volunteer role, what that looks like, and even maybe give them the schedule of when we'll have lead volunteers starting. So you will see that email coming out. For anyone else who's watching this in the future, because I could see us kind of adding lead volunteers onesie, twosie, into the future as we have openings on the schedule. It's really, we're asking you, we can still email the group of volunteers that you'll see most often to do an introduction, but really it's up to you, no matter when you're volunteering as lead volunteer, to make those introductions, to, reach out, connect with the volunteers that are active during your shift time, introduce yourself, explain what your role is. Hey, I'm just here to help. I'm here to be an extra set of hands. I'm here to answer questions. If you have any problems, call me whenever you need anything and I will come and help. So we're really asking you to start reaching out to the volunteers that are scheduled during your regular shift time, introduce yourself, make those connections, and just be a resource and a welcoming face to the volunteers that you see on a regular basis. Is there anything else you can think of, Joni?
No, I mean, I think that's the most important thing. I mean, if you want to get the team a time to meet, to have dinner together, our lead volunteers have done that in the past. Sometimes we have active projects going on in the volunteer rooms, so you could say, hey, let's meet back here at such and such time, so everyone go get their tasks done, and then we'll do this together. It's just really forming that community and those connections with our volunteers when we are out of the office. So
yeah. So thank you for the role that you're going to be playing in building up our volunteer team and supporting our department and the work that we do and the people who we connect with, serve, work with. Thank you for what you are going to be doing in the role that you're going to be playing as a lead volunteer. So with that, I think we've covered everything we're going to cover. Again, please reach out to us with any questions, concerns, and if you have any suggestions for different ways we can connect with you or with the volunteers that are on our team. We're always open to suggestions. So,
yep.
All right. I think with that, we're going to log off. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.